Everyone, and welcome to Ful-on, your Fulham Central Football Podcast. I'm your host, Ash Woolford. Joining me is a full team today. AJ, how you doing, mate?
Yeah.
Yeah. Mozza and yourself, mate.
I'm incredibly exhausted for multiple reasons, but handsome as ever.
Look at
Factual.
the positives, eh? Look at the positives. And Drew, obviously, you weren't here for the preview of this game, but I know you're gonna have plenty to say about it post game. How you doing, mate?
Yeah, please bear with me while I slap on a fake smile and just plough through this shite. Because it's going to be painful.
Yeah, it is gonna be painful.
You're
It's
not wrong.
obviously we're here to talk about Palace game on Saturday. We're not going to really talk over the game too much because there's not much to talk about. We're more going to talk about, where we felt it went wrong and lessons that need to be learned from it, especially if we are going to push on for the rest of the season, potentially get that European spot. But I'm not going to lie to you. We're recording this on Monday night for it to come out on Monday night because none of us really could face talking about it still on Sunday evening. It was a deep, deep cutting game. This one, it hurt a lot, and it's very, very hard to talk about because it's still pretty raw, and the emotions of it are pretty raw. But we're gonna do our best to sort of look at where it went wrong and maybe come up with the real reasons why it probably didn't work. Drew, man, I'm going to start with you because obviously you weren't here with the previous show. A lot went wrong on Saturday, right? A lot went wrong. Starting lineup wise, how did you feel about it? The bench, how do you feel about it? There was a few players missing. There was a few. How did you feel at the time?
I thought ironically enough, I thought the team was probably the strongest we could have played. I totally understood the reason he picked Pereira over ESR for reasons we've discussed. Pereira at least puts himself about a bit more, whereas ESR is not likely to be able to play his way out of a bad game. Um, I think it is somewhat of a sad indictment of the club that we are having to play Willian from the start. As wonderful as he is, he hasn't played a full season of football and he's 36 years old. But he's still easily one of our best technical players. I could understand Muniz, physical and strong. In terms of a lineup, I couldn't really fault it. The back four really picked itself, principally because on the fullback side we've got no options. Leno's clearly our number one in goal, and as we've discussed before, Silva is very much a creature of habit. He has his favourite formation. He's got his favourite players. So to be fair to him, I think it was very, very predictable. But having said that, I wasn't really sitting there thinking, well, I'd have done a lot differently, bearing in mind the importance of the game and how he likes to rely on his senior pros. But as we will talk about, it quickly and apparently became unstuck.
Yeah, it's a bit frustrating for me this one because I was actually like you. I was happy with the starting lineup when I saw it come out on Saturday morning, but it very, very quickly into the game became very clear that a couple of the players probably weren't quite up to. I don't want to say fitness, but they definitely weren't 100%. And it became very telling very, very quickly, and especially more so after that opening 20-minute time period when we had loads of ball and loads of control. Probably should have taken a chance. We're not going to argue and moan about, you know, players that should have been yellow carded and sent off and all that rubbish because it's completely devoid of the result on Saturday. It didn't really matter because after that 20 minutes, it became adamantly clear that there was a few players on the pitch that were not up to scratch. They definitely weren't fit enough. For me, the first player I want to talk about, and AJ, I'm going to come to you and talk about him because you mentioned him a bit when we were talking privately on Saturday afternoon. Alex Iwobi. Um, we all love Alex, right? We know he's a good footballer. We know that he has the when he's on it, he's on it, and when he works, we work as a football team. But he's looked tired for weeks, actually probably for a couple of months, right? He's looked really, really tired. On Saturday, he just looked like he was dead on his feet, and we're talking from like minute one of the game. It really wasn't a great outing for him because you could see fitness-wise, he just was not there. You're muted.
Yeah, I wonder if he's been off playing some five-a-side with some mates to reconcile over the defeat. Which, by the way, I have nothing against him doing. I appreciate the club don't like him doing it, but it's his way of staying in love with the game, apparently. I'll certainly be doing the same thing on Wednesday to keep me in love with the game, that's for sure. But yeah, his performance, as you said, it's just a showing of his overcommitment thus far this season, and he's played way too many minutes. And frankly, he's wasted out wide. He was bought playing as a central midfielder for Everton. We used him as a central midfielder until we purchased Emile Smith Rowe, and then subsequently he's been forced out wide again. And Drew has stated in the past that he'd like to see Iwobi again in that 8 or 10 role because he's much more of a workforce in that midfield compared to Andreas or ESR. And frankly, we just have better options out wide. Yes, they might be younger. Yes, they might be recovering from confidence. But frankly, at what point are we going to trust them to just do a job? Like, if Godot were to decide in the summer he wants to leave for a team that will give him first team football, I wouldn't be surprised. If King wants to do the same, even if Sessegnon ends up having an argument because he wants more football, I wouldn't be surprised. Sessegnon is slightly different because he's returned to us because he loves us, etc. And there's a little bit more wiggle room there for easing him back into the squad. But at what point do we just trust these young, exciting, fast, energetic, and powerful players to actually do something for us? Because if it's not at a point where we're playing a 36-year-old out wide, who, credit to him, is probably the best player on the pitch for us, but at that point, if you're an 18-year-old winger sitting there going, well, why is the free transfer bloke that came in as a stopgap playing ahead of me in a cup fixture? Like, at what point are you questioning yourself? It's a detriment to Marco Silva, who I love and adore, and thank him for everything he's done thus far, and thank him for everything he will do for us, no doubt. But it doesn't change that it's a detriment to him that he doesn't seem to allow the youngsters any more than gimmick minutes that don't seem to mean much in the long haul of things. To be honest, I think Sessegnon, granted he wouldn't play as a right winger, but Sessegnon, after his recent performances, probably should have gotten the nod considering our fitness issues, but we'll get into that in a little while. In regards to Iwobi, there's not much more to say other than he's burnt out and shouldn't have been played, in my opinion.
Yes, it's interesting you mentioned Willian because for me, Willian was the most mobile player on the pitch on Saturday.
He was, and like I said, it's a credit to him. But
no, that's the problem. He was the most mobile player on the pitch because the movement from everybody else was dire. Like there was some really strange moments in that game. Talking about Iwobi, I was being harsh at half time when everyone was saying he should come. When I was saying he should come off at half time, I would have pulled him off after 20 minutes. After he made about 5 really stray passes that were quite simple passes out wide, and there was an awful lot of overlap play with him where he just looked like where Timmy Castagna looked like he was too scared to overlap him because he knew that it weren't going to get anything from it, and the way he looked like he was running on his heels the whole time. And this it's important to say, right? I'm not trying to bash Alex Iwobi here because we all like Alex Iwobi, right? He's been a really important player for us, especially over the last 2 seasons. But he just looks dead. He looks like he needs a break, And Saturday in a game that's that important against a team that we know can counter attack exceptionally well, it just didn't work for him. And it's just one of it's poor. There's many other players, and we're going to talk about them as we sort of break it down. For me, another player that really brought me concern, and Mozza, I'm going to let you have a comment on him on this one, is Andreas Pereira. Arguably, he's probably one of the better players on the pitch, but he still had a really ineffective game. Lost the ball loads, really poor passing, almost looked like he wasn't concentrating half the time. And it's yet again another game where he plays poorly, we play poorly. It just didn't go right for him on Saturday.
Yeah. I'm just trying to relive it in my head, unfortunately. I have been a Pereira apologist, as anyone who's watched this podcast will have known before, but I've still been fairly balanced in my opinion of him. In terms of that, we've seen this before. We've seen this before from him. We won't even discuss a bit of the controversy that happens. Morty Vicker, whoever that was. We'll have a bit of controversy that happened with him possibly moving to another team. But yeah, talking about his performance, he does often show heart, but I can only describe what he did as he had a turkey. He had a right turkey, and I don't really know where to start. I don't like. He wasn't good, and I understand why everyone feels. Well, most of the fans feel the way that they feel about him. But then again, we've played games where he's played completely out of his skin. So I've heard it mentioned or seen it mentioned that he's Marco Silva's special boy or something along those lines. That sounds a bit dodgy, but you know what I mean. Yeah, but I really don't know, mate. There were an awful lot of chances and opportunities, shots, through passes, like through balls that he could have done. And if he had been successful with them, that could have put us ahead. And I reckon that would have, if we'd gone 1-0 up against Palace, I reckon the result would have been different, right? I'm not saying that we wouldn't have conceded, but I reckon we would have won that game. It's not all down to one man, but very disappointed with him. But I bet he feels disappointed with himself, and so he should. That you just can't tell with that geezer. I don't know why in some games he can perform, and I think Drew mentioned on a couple of podcasts ago that he does properly turn up against, the big six and all that. And in a game where we needed him to really turn up today, and I was glad to see him in the starting lineup too. I'll say today, sorry. Forget what day it is. But we needed him to perform. He didn't perform. So yeah, it's like I'm there again.
Can I just say something, Mozza, and I'm not in any way, shape, or form taking issue with anything you've said here. Pereira and ESR combined, have managed 6 assists this season. Yeah. Big chances created, they've managed combined 7. Yeah, and I'm getting these stats from the PremierLeague.com. Eze for Crystal Palace on his own has managed 6 assists and 9 big chances created. And he has played less games than both of them. And I think, quite frankly, when we needed a difference maker from the 10 position, neither of the players that we have bought for that role showed up on Saturday at all. And I have said it before, I admire Silva's loyalty and the criticisms about the lineup. Silva was never going to play the kids in such a big game because he just doesn't trust them. And AJ's point about, if King wants more minutes, he'll go somewhere else. Realistically, who in the top 6 is going to play a 17-year-old in a number 10 position? The only reason he would go is for more money. Godot is an unknown quantity. He's not going to be going to a bigger club at this age. And Silva, time and time again, has shown that he will go with experience, and he was always going to do that. But the real issue is Crystal Palace, one player has produced more on his own as a creative outlet than our two designated number 10s for a whole season. And someone's got to acknowledge that. Someone's got to acknowledge that. Just before the game started, and I know Ash, I am not trying to wind you up because I know how hard you took this defeat. Before the game started, we had another outburst of Pereira rumours in the press about him looking for an exit in the summer. Ash, you made the point in our chat that biggest game of our season so far. And what are we talking about? Or what the press talking about? They're talking about Pereira and a transfer. I don't think his head's in the game at all. I genuinely don't. I genuinely don't. And I know that we're going to do a Arsenal preview show, but if our season suddenly starts to peter out, I don't see the point in playing him. I mean, I'm totally on board with AJ. I would rather lose every game till the end of the season, but I'd like to see the kids in, just so we know what we've got going into 25-26. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut across you, Mozza, but I'm just looking at it.
I totally agree with you, and everything you've said is spot on. I haven't seen those rumours that you just mentioned, but I'm sure most of the people that watch it have, and you other boys have as well.
Yeah,
but
he's linked to Flamengo, mate.
Yeah. Well, shock horror. But the last thing I'll say is, I know we'll talk about subs, but while we're on this subject, whatever you think of Pereira, and I'm not saying I'm a massive fanboy or whatever, he's so inconsistent. It wasn't good enough. What I didn't like was him being booed, and I could be wrong. We spoke about this on our WhatsApp group. Him being booed off the pitch when he got subbed off later in the game, and I just thought, we might be 2-0 down or whatever, but it's at that moment we need the fans and everyone to get behind us. Get behind your players, get behind your club, unless they've done something extremely despicable or illegal, whatnot. I just thought that was a bit off, and we've spoken about it in previous podcasts. But I will caveat this point later with a positive about the atmosphere at Craven Cottage. But yeah, that's all I'll say about that. Now.
Yeah, look, let's look at the substitutions here, right? Because we all agree that as well as there was many players on the pitch that had really bad games, and we could spend literally hours here just critiquing every single player on what they did wrong and how bad they were, right? And we've only mentioned Iwobi and Pereira. Anderson had a shocker again against Palace. Robertson had probably one of the worst games he's had in a long time, and again, I'm not 100% sure if that's down to fitness, and it may well be. Obviously, he didn't go away on the US camp, and that would explain an awful lot. He was very hesitant sometimes to get to bomb forwards, which is something I noticed. But also unsurprising considering who he's marking on that wing. There were moments in that second half, and this is the most frustrating thing for me, where I could not tell you what formation Fulham were playing. There was 30 minutes of that second half where we had 3 players on the left wing and no one on the right. Timmy Castagna was covering the whole of the right side of the pitch by himself. And again, I don't know if that was down to us going, we know where their danger's coming from. Let's watch that and let's go. We just didn't look like we had it. And yet again, the same problem has occurred with Fulham, where we spoke about substitutions in a couple of weeks, and we'll go through them now, and we'll talk about it again, and everyone will make the exact same point. Too many subs that were made on Saturday were basically like-for-like substitutions that did not change the formation, they did not change the setup, and they did not change our approach to in the way we were attacking at all. In a game where we are struggling to break down the team, we know that Fulham really struggle with teams that come in with a low block, especially when we're chasing a game. Now, I hear your point you made, Mozza, about Pereira and the booing on Saturday. For me, the booing that was coming from around me wasn't because of Pereira was coming off. it was because ESR was coming on. The substitutions on Saturday were a real issue for us, right? We said it ourselves, and I said it, that Iwobi should have come off at half time. He looked dead on his feet. He was really ineffective. As I said, he spent half an hour of the second half on the wrong fucking wing with no one covering his actual wing. And then you look at the other subs that were made and you worry about what was going on there, right? We waited until the 63rd minute to make a change in a game that we're chasing. Yes, he brought Traore on, which is probably a little bit more adventurous going forward because he has the ability to tackle a little bit, but especially has more legs in him than Iwobi did at that time. ESR coming on. Now, we've said it a million times, and I'll let Drew say it again, right? When you're losing a game of football, ESR is not the player you want to be bringing on. Especially when you're 2-0 down in a cup quarter final and you're chasing it. You don't want to bring someone who ghosts. Speak, Drew. Let us know, mate. Tell us.
There's a lot of raw emotion here because people are genuinely upset. I think the bottom line for me is Silva. We lost this game because of the way we set up.
Yeah.
I think that I'm not criticising Palace at all. Okay, they have their way of playing. They sit, as Ash has said, in a low block. They play 5 at the back, and they rely on pace and power and the difference makers. A couple of points that Ash has made, mentioning Robinson and Iwobi. If you look at our appearances this season, those two rank right at the top.
Yep.
Okay, those two rank right at the top. I think both are fabulous. Some on Fulham Twitter have pointed out that Iwobi should not be a headline act. He should be a support player. I can see that argument, but we don't really have headline acts, and he is asked to do a lot more than he probably should be doing in terms of our offensive and creative output. The interesting thing about the substitutions for me, bearing in mind the way Crystal Palace didn't want the ball. They weren't set up to play with the ball. Yeah, they were set up to absorb the pressure and then just pick Fulham off. It seemed to me that if Fulham were going to have so much of that ball, the one player that you have in your team or you have in your squad when you're enjoying a lot of possession, who is able to pick a pass and dictate the pace of the game, is Tom Cairney. Even at his age, no one in that squad, is better as being a pure passer than him. And Ash, the ESR comment, mate, that's a podcast in itself. Because if you read Fulham Twitter now, they're rapidly running out of patience. There's questions about his physical fitness, his weight, his courage, his desire. I mean, Silva this week came out doing the rounds to protect him. But I think the point you made, Ash, about the substitutions not changing anything, that's got to come down to Silva. I mean, we all know. I mean, when Cesc came on, he was made captain. He went to left back. I nearly cried. That says more about the state of our squad and the fact that Robinson's knackered than it does anything else. Because we all know, we all love Cesc. We adore him. Ryan, if you're watching, this is not a criticism of you. But you ain't no left back, mate. You ain't no left back. And as for the balance in the team, when Jimenez came on and
played as a 10.
Yeah, I was just like, I was with Ash. I was like, what the hell is going on? That game, we had a game plan. That's why we applied so much pressure in the first 20 minutes, was to go 1-0 up. Palace did nothing until they scored. Once they scored, basically, the back five completely confounded Fulham. And Fulham, and I've already mentioned our two players that are earmarked for 10. Fulham had no one capable of unlocking that team. And it was pretty much the game, in my view, my humble opinion, was set as soon as Palace went 1-0 up.
Can I take a second to discuss?
Sorry, AJ. Sorry, I apologise.
No, you were the one that was talking. That's me asking if I can take a second.
No, I'll keep my mouth shut. Go ahead, mate.
No, you're fine. just on ESR, I don't want to talk about it too much because it will just genuinely upset me, but I just don't think he's cut for it. It's something that as much as I'd love to be wrong, I just don't think he is. He's got the same number of big chances created as what other player in our squad? Can anyone guess?
I don't know, Robinson.
Bert
David
Leno.
Bessie. Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Bert
Leno's probably got
Leno.
more assists than you.
No. ESR's somehow got one more assist, but with only one big chance created.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
I think that might have been one of those sideways passes to Iwobi for a big cross in or something like that.
Oh, the West Ham
those were
goals.
both those were both Robinson, weren't they? He got two
Yeah,
assists for those. Yeah. No. It's just I don't know what it is with ESR, but as soon as he came on, that was game over for me as far as I was concerned watching the game.
I just don't
It's
think
tough
I
to
don't think
say.
he's got
It
the
was over before then.
mentality. I don't think
It
he's
was
got the
over
mentality.
before then. No, he doesn't.
Yeah.
He doesn't. And it's a real concern for me because, you know, when you spend £35 million on a player, right? We spoke about it earlier on, and everyone obviously I appreciate no one who's watching is in our WhatsApp group, so they won't be a part of this. But £35 million brings you expectation. I would be pissed off if we spent £3.5 million on what we've got out of Emma Smith-Rowe this season. He gets so much, wind blown up his backside, especially by people on social media who don't watch us play and just assume because we're doing well, we're doing okay, he's the main reason for it because we spent £35 million on him and he's come from Arsenal, right? But realistically, he is a negative in our starting lineup at the moment. Him being on when he came on Saturday, and then the first 4 passes he made were back towards Anderson at centre back. 2 of the times he got the ball in that period, it would have taken one player to turn around and tell him, "There's no one around you. You've got time to turn and face and head towards the Palace goal." But they didn't do it. Ultimately, we can all sit here and moan about all of the players that played on Saturday because no one put in a shift good enough for us to deserve to go through. Palace won the game. Palace deserved to win the game. Good luck to them in the semi-final. Good luck to them moving on. They deserve to win. There's no argument against it. My biggest problem is that as much as we all love him, and we've alluded to it a couple of times, right? On Saturday, Marco Silva got everything wrong. Everything was wrong. Right? As soon as it became very clear that our game approach to the game wasn't working, and we weren't creating enough chances to get that early lead we needed, something needed changing. Whether that was a formational change or a substitution needed to be made, especially with the way that Alex Iwobi started the game and looking like he'd already ran a marathon before he started. Right? Then the subs were wrong. They were at the wrong time. They were the wrong players coming off and the wrong players coming on, and it didn't change anything. The only substitution he made that I thought was correct was bringing on a Traore. Every other sub was wrong. Kearney was a wrong sub because it happened 20 minutes too late. Bringing Sesson at left back was obviously just because Robinson had run his ground. He was already, you could see he was dead, and he just couldn't carry on, right? And from that moment on, the game was just filtered out. It was gone. It was done. There was nothing else playing for, and we weren't even nowhere near looking to come back into it. We all love Marco Silva, and we've said this before. His substitutions in games are baffling. Now, I used to say the same thing about Roy Hodgson. I love Roy Hodgson as Fulham manager, but his substitution and his policies on substitutions, and when he does them, it was so frustrating because it doesn't matter how well or bad the game's going. It's almost like he won't make a substitution until at least the 65th minute. And it's the same with Marco. There should have been at least 2 subs made at half time on Saturday, right? And the players should have been coming out with a boot up their ass and then looking like they were going to change it. Instead, what actually happened was Palace came out in the second half and went, "We're just going to let you keep the ball because we don't need to do anything because you guys are beating yourselves because you can't get past the edge of the box. You got no imagination. There's no movement. There's no creativity. Arguably, if we'd had maybe Godot or King on the bench, but they weren't even on the bench, one of those might have been a difference maker, at least perked up the energy. What I will say about the game on Saturday is, and I think we all agree with it, the atmosphere at Craven Cottage was outstanding, right? It was outstanding. Start of the game, if you're a Fulham player and you can't come out and perform in an atmosphere like that, this is the atmosphere that Marco Silva has been screaming for all season, right? And I think the Fulham fans turned up on Saturday and we did ourselves proud on Saturday. But obviously the game just took that away from the wind, completely blown out of ourselves by the second half, because we were all dumbfounded at what we were watching and how no one could get themselves up for the game. And it looked really, really scary how a lot of players wilted under that pressure. If you're looking at players that are wilting under pressure, and that pressure is a home quarter-final in an FA Cup, we're not going to get very far. We're not going to do. We need some improvements there. And the whole Drew said it about people murmuring about Alex Iwobi not being a star man, but being a man, but not the star man. I understand. I understand it, but traditionally this season, when Iwobi's played well, we've played well, and we haven't played well in probably, other than maybe that second half of that Spurs game, in months. And it's because he's looked like he's absolutely dead on his feet, and he has been for months, and it's just frustrating. There's no way a Marco Silva Fulham team, or a Fulham team, most mobile player on a football pitch should be a 36-year-old Willian. Just getting his full legal name in there just so we all have it, right? It was embarrassing. The players let the fans down on Saturday. Marco set them up to let us down, and it is as simple as that. If Fulham want to keep recreating that atmosphere, they have to give us moments where we can create it. It's hard for us to do so. Right? Saturday, for the first time in ages, we all agreed Fulham got an awful lot right, in the sense that they set ticket prices sensibly. They created an atmosphere. We created an atmosphere. Right? We all went into the game nervous, but in a good way. And after we conceded two poorly defended goals, as well as the SA one was taken, it was taken really, really well, and it just deflated everything. I come away from the game on Saturday and I can't even fully put into words how I feel. But I wasn't just dejected and didn't want to talk about it on Sunday. I was almost a little bit heartbroken. It was almost like if you have a girlfriend that you love her and then you find out she's cheating on you, and you got that whole thing where it's just like, I don't want to talk about it because it hurts too much to think about it, but I know I have to, and it's frustrating. Look, before we go, is any of you guys got anything you want to add about the game? Anything you want to add about anything?
Sorry, Ash. Just a couple of things.
Go on.
The girlfriend analogy. At least you can dump that bitch. None of us are dumping Fulham. So we're in for a lot more misery. I think.
Depends if you're married.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things. I think, as much as was wrong with the game, I think what cost us were recurrent themes we've been talking about all season. Yeah. Over-reliance on key players, lack of rotation, lack of depth, inherent weaknesses in the squad's structure. And I have to say, Marco called that game wrong. When he took off Robinson, I think he had an eye on Arsenal and other games because he thought it was all over then. I think that at some point, and we've discussed this, I think we discussed this a couple of weeks ago, especially this off-season, Fulham are going to need to sit down and have a long, hard think about what sort of football team they want to be. Because one thing that I have noticed, the further up the league we've gone this season, and trying to maintain being competitive on two fronts, i.e. the FA Cup and the league, has properly taken it out of us. It's properly taken it. And when it came to it at the weekend, we just had nothing left. We just had nothing left. And I do wonder because I think it's going to be quite a seminal off season. I think the club really do have to think long and hard. I don't think this was all about one game. I think this was recurrent themes. But anyway, I won't say any more on it.
Look, Mozza, I know that you were particularly happy with the atmosphere and stuff on Saturday. What did you want to say, mate? What did you want to say?
So I've just had to quickly bend over off the camera and grab an artifact, which you will all be old enough to remember. This relic is, good 25 years old, back when we got promoted out of Division 1. Look at that, 2001, 2002. I took this with me on Saturday, and it doesn't often make an appearance because it's very special to me for obvious reasons. I've had a really tough time personally, and I had a day the day before this game, and where I share a season ticket with my mother, she was in our shared seats, and we managed to get another ticket, and I was still in the hammy end, H5, row 3. So I knew I'd be near the front, which I'm not used to. Row 3, it turns out, which I didn't know, is row 1. So I was right behind the goal, which gave me a whole different aspect and view on things. And that was an experience. But as I walked into Craven Cottage, all the fans were just up for it. Everyone just turned up. And the reason I support Fulham, I'm trying not to get emotional, is because of my mum, Claire Morris. And we walked past her birthplace even on the way back out of the grounds. And despite the result, it's crap. It's to say the least. But I really needed that, and I just want to thank all the Fulham fans for turning up. We normally do a man of the match, and that Fulham fans who turned up and gave it their all. You're not man of the match. You're people of the match, players of the match. It was the Fulham fans, and that's why we do what we do and why we love our club despite these shit times. And I just want to thank all the fans for that. And it was just what I needed. And and bless my my partner in crime at Fulham FC, and in all other aspects, my mum Claire Morris. So thank you. Sorry for getting a bit.
No, don't apologise.
I think that's a great way to leave it. To say the truth,
You're absolutely
I
fine.
don't think I can beat that.
No, 100%, 100% was you've done the right thing by ending with that, because it does remind us that Saturday was shit. There's no other way of describing it. Saturday was shit. But it's moments like Saturday that reaffirm why we all love the football club that we love. Right? Better times will come, worse times will come. This is Fulham, right? We've all seen shitter moments. We've all seen better moments in terms of jubilation and things actually working for the football club. We have to move on, not only as a fan base, but as a football team. We've got some big games coming up for the rest of this season. You know, we are still somehow fighting for European spots, and we have to take the moments like Saturday, appreciate them for what they were, as much as they hurt, and as much as none of us actually wanted to sit here and talk about the game and what it was, and remember moments like that. And Mozza, thanks very much for sharing, mate. I know it's not necessarily the easiest thing to share, but we all need to be remembering moments like that and just taking that moment to appreciate it. Because what'll happen is you'll have a shit game like we had on Saturday, and then do the school run in the middle of Croydon like I did this morning, and you remember that Fulham is shit, but my fucking God, I love it. So, you know, I'm going to finish on there with this one. Let's move on. We need to go and talk about the Arsenal game, which we're going to do. Thanks, guys, for joining me on this one. We're going to put this out on Monday night, so it should be out anyway. The Arsenal preview that we're about to record will be out on Tuesday morning, obviously the morning of the game. Hopefully we can try and look at a little bit of glimmer and be a little bit positive, but who knows? Other than that, thanks very much for joining me, guys. We move, we live, we carry on, and we hope that this cup on the screen down here isn't the only one that we see a Fulham have at some point in the next couple of years.